So compare for us, you've traveled throughout the country and parts of the world. Compare for us the Kansas City art scene to those of others.
Well, I'll put it this way. The Midwest is going through, in my opinion, an art renaissance right now that really has its roots in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's just exploding throughout the Midwest. And Kansas City is on the cutting edge of that renaissance in every capacity. Representational work, avant-garde, conceptual, abstraction, strictly contemporary, every medium, every discipline, all kinds of things are happening in this area. And so this area is, in many respects, on the cutting edge, and you'll find artists here who could easily pass muster in Soho and Chelsea in New York. Not that I consider that necessarily what you have to have a valid career. I think there's so much going on outside of New York that's more interesting than what's going on inside New York right now that I'll take west of the Hudson any day of the week. So while that's happening, and it's happened relatively quickly in the last 15, 16, 17 years, that wasn't the case here in the late 70s and throughout the 80s. I wouldn't have been, if I was an art consultant in Kansas City at that time, I would have been more reluctant to push regional talent as hard as I push it now, because I didn't feel at that time it had the same maturity that it does now. You know, but why would it? The whole Midwest has grown up enormously in the last 25 years, hardly just Kansas City. So how do I rate Kansas City now? We're on the cutting edge, there's no doubt about it.
Tell us about the fact that art is not a scientific thing, but rather subjective. When one sees an art piece, he or she may like it, and the same piece may be disliked by others.
Sure.
Just how does an artist take that?
Some not
criticism,
well.
That is.
Some don't take it well at all. It's my job for artists I represent to keep them away from the criticism, because sometimes it interferes with their process. Virtually every artist I know does the absolute best they can. That's why when I'm sitting on a committee jurying works in for consideration for a huge collection, one of the first rules I establish is no one ever mocks a submission. No one ever mocks an artist's style or attempt. To me, that goes against the grain of art creation, and it goes against the grain of respect and integrity. All artists do the best that they can. No artist creates work that are constantly at a high plateau throughout their career and then they retire. Artists, like writers, create works that have their highs and their lows throughout their career. And when they're passionate about what they're doing, they feel in lock with their instincts, their artistic intuition, and they've really paid their dues, the blood and the sweat and the guts, and it goes on for a lifetime. The sacrifices are enormous. Then they'll begin hitting that plateau if it's in them. And after a while, they'll develop a thick skin, and the criticism won't matter. But on the way up, while they're developing, I will go to great lengths to keep that criticism away from them, except when I get a chance, or someone they trust get a chance to talk to them about their work. And you never begin by criticizing a piece. You begin by praising a piece, even if you're not altogether happy about it. Because what they're doing is a very difficult undertaking that takes tremendous discipline, day in, day out, 7 days a week. And it's a kind of discipline that, to be honest, a lot of people in other professions wouldn't be able to hack, because you've got to be able to pour that discipline into it without getting rewards for probably half your life, or sometimes more than that. So when they're developing their work, I keep that criticism away from them. They have enough to deal with.
So how do you do that? How do you keep criticism away from an artist?
Well, it's easy. If things get online and that sort of stuff, I don't tell them about it. They can find it on their own, or they can't. But otherwise, at openings, I like to keep the flavor of an opening very positive, and normally they are. And if someone wants to get into that studio class sort of criticism where you've got critique day, that's between them and their peers. But for my part and my clients and all the rest of it, they'll never hear a peep of it while they're developing unless it's constructive.
So as an art consultant, and when it comes to art, how do you define success?
Aesthetically first. And how do you define aesthetic success? Well, that depends. It's so different. For a conceptual artist that creates work out of broken glass and crushed beer cans, what they consider success, and that's not necessarily invalid, what they consider successful is far different from what someone who's trying to be a great figure painter along the lines of the figure painting of the late Renaissance. And yes, people are still attempting that these days. What they define as success is completely different. But for me, I will know instinctively as a dealer when they're approaching that period of maturity that is that golden period in an artist's life, which can be a 10-year stretch or a 50-year stretch, depends upon the artist and how they handle their creativity, how they handle their talent, how they handle their lives personally and professionally and otherwise.
So you're saying that an artist could be successful and yet not have money?
Oh, for sure. That's more the case than not. Financial success is not a determiner of artistic success, in my opinion. But
from the artistic point of view, or from the artist's point of view, I think he may say, I'm successful because I've made X number of dollars.
Oh, sure. There are a lot of artists that view it that way, and just as many who are very leery of financial success and will do anything they can to avoid it. It depends on the frame of mind of the artist. But once they reach that level of aesthetic success, what to me is really important is to help them make a living. Just as a valued doctor is paid well, a valued lawyer, a valued politician, or whoever else, engineer, teacher, well, teachers aren't paid that well. One way society expresses how it values what an artist does is they compensate them financially in a way that is commensurate or beyond commensurate to their talent, discipline, and sacrifice. This allows them and their family to live with a modicum of financial integrity and dignity. And to me, that's very important. That isn't selling out. That's being fair to these people who have traded in so much to do what they do. Because if you don't have an active segment of artistic development in any given society, that society will not evolve, especially in a democracy.
All right. What is the one thing, Paul, about the Kansas City art scene that most people have not yet realized?
That there are all facets of art being created here, that while the Crossroads is a hub of what is going on, there's also great work being created in farmhouses in southern Johnson County or in Clay County or in suburbs of Jackson County and throughout the city, that it doesn't revolve just around one segment of the city. It's a citywide movement. And furthermore, what a lot of people don't realize until they get into the game is that when you're involved in the arts and you affirm your community's artistic growth and sophistication by acquiring work and participating, whether corporately or privately, what you're really doing is you're sending a note of affirmation throughout the community. Because just the way we did the H&R Block project or Sprint Center for that matter, when you use regional artists and try to get them to rise up to a level of world-class execution, which I'm told we achieved with these major projects, then what you're telling your community is that they rank with the rest of the country in terms of art creation, not just in the visual arts, in the performing arts, in the literary arts, in all the arts. Well, this filters down throughout the schools, throughout the institutions, and it affects the corporations as well, especially if they collect the work, because they can share in this passion and this rare time in our history and this tremendous movement. Because no movement can have this kind of juice forever. Sooner or later, it gravitates to a different part of the country or settles down or something like that. The time that we're going through right now is very exciting, and a lot of people aren't aware of that either.
So if you had your way, what one thing would you like to see happen in with the Kansas City art community?
Well, one thing I'd like to see happen to the Kansas City art community is more corporations and private collectors, instead of sending their consultants to New York, LA, or Paris, make sure that they exhaust all possibilities here first, because you can't prove in a community that people can execute world-class works if you don't give them the opportunity. It doesn't mean you have to commission site-specific pieces for a new law firm or a new accounting firm or a new physician's office or any corporate headquarters. You can acquire pieces that are already in studios. But without carefully exploring what's going on here and really becoming familiar with it, which normally you would do through the galleries in the Crossroads, in my gallery, or any number of venues, then you can't know what's going on. So I would urge people to participate more than just go on their first Fridays and wandering through the galleries. Participate financially, because if you don't, these artists are going to flee this area and they're going to go to other areas where they feel they have a better chance of making a living, and that would be a tremendous loss.
So